Great, and we're live. So good morning, everyone. A very warm welcome to anyone dialing in and joining us this morning. I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Emma Peet from Climate Outreach. Good morning, Emma.
Good morning, Josh. Absolute pleasure to be here.
Now, Emma, hopefully today we've only got 30 minutes and we've got a huge amount of stuff we wanted to talk about and wanted to cover. So we'll launch into it quite quickly. But today we're thinking about how really to get practical around that shift from getting people agreeing something, especially around sustainability, around climate change, around the environment, into doing something about those things. I feel like it's probably not about perfect wording. It's not about getting it absolutely spot on, but it's just what is helping people feel part of that process, part of that journey, and why their role matters. So I know that people joining us today are likely to be sustainability professionals, likely to be, wrestling with this issue day in, day out in what they do and how they do it. So yeah, but let's dive in. I think to start with, it'd be really great to hear from yourself, Emma, about what climate outreach does.
Yeah, of course. So climate outreach, it came about in the mid 2000s. And I know we've advanced quite a lot with climate change communication since then, but it exists to kind of help people, organizations, government to tell a different climate story. I'm trying to shift that narrative from one of kind of powerlessness, to give people a sense of agency through, talking about people, progress, place. And to do that, we do a lot of original research, so a lot of social science, talking to people, asking people how they think and feel about climate change. So it's really about listening first before you kind of go and share, your theories. So yes, listening first approach, putting people at the center of that story, and trying to unlock more of that ambitious climate action, which isn't easy. I think that's worth saying up front, that climate change comes, it's hard. And there is no one size fits all, but certainly there's patterns and trends that come up that I'm eager to share today.
And do you see yourselves more as researchers in the space? Are you strategists, translators?
Yes.
Where do you come from?
No, it's a good question. I think, to be honest, we're a bit of everything, because there's also another arm to our charity, which is we have a visuals. We have a set of photographs which show climate impact solutions. So we're a lot about the story. So we give that narrative advice, but we do back that with the kind of the stats and the research. So you can come at approach your comms with more, with more confidence that it's going to land, essentially. So we want to help build people's confidence in that storytelling, because there's a lot of, you don't want to go into it thinking, oh, it's just me, and, on an assumption based level. So it does really help to know that this stuff lands. So we do a lot of narrative testing and all sorts, really.
Fantastic. And what about yourself personally? What attracted you into climate communications?
Yeah, good question. So for me, I think climate change, for a lot of people, it's kind of like a radio channel. It's a noise in my head that just gets louder and louder. You wish you could turn it off, but it doesn't. The frequency, it gets louder. And so with that in mind, I thought, and also with the window narrowing, the window of time that we have to kind of work with it and inspire climate action. So and my love of words, obviously words are powerful things. Especially words that can tell kind of a story that might invite more action. So it's kind of a perfect kind of combination of where my passions lie. To be honest, I wish I didn't have to work in climate comms. I wish this wasn't a challenge that we're facing, but this is where we're at. So it's accepting that, and it's certainly a world of. It's very uplifting, actually, once you realise that people are worried about climate change, and people do want to see change. When you're for the everyday person who sees climate change on their, stories reporting on a lot of doom and gloom, you can forget that there actually is a whole world out there and groups of people that are doing things.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that analogy of the background noise, the radio waves, and I think that's fantastic. I think we'll come back to that a bit, because I think for some people that noise can be overwhelming, right? And it can be cause anxiety and stress. So
of course,
we'll come back to that. So I think one of my first questions for you is around, as a society, we've got so much science now. We've never had as much information as we do about climate change. I suppose my question to you is, why do you feel that's not translating into action from an individual perspective, but also an organizational level?
Yeah, yeah, of course. So there is definitely that widening gap between like the intensifying impacts of climate change and then also this quite slow pace of action to tackle it. So you're totally right about that. And I think some of this has actually to do with a lot of what the media reports on. So some really interesting research came out last year by the University of Oxford, which said they looked at 8 countries, including the US, the UK, Brazil, and media coverage on climate change peaked at around 2021. And since then, it's kind of fallen. So we're at a 38% decline from what it was in 2021. And it's attributed to this feeling of like compassion, this fatigue. Climate change isn't glamorous. It's a complex issue. There's a lot of things that, and because the effects of it are worsening, it leads to a lot of that doom and gloom, which I mentioned earlier. So, and that puts people in this state of like inertia, people don't know what they can do to help and they feel helplessness. So what we advise is really like switching that narrative, telling a story of people and progress is so meaningful. Also through the research we've done. So Britain Talks Climate and Nature, that's our kind of flagship research. And we spoke to over 7,000 people across England, Wales, Scotland. And people tell us time and time again that they feel maxed out basically with what they feel, there's more immediate concerns and challenges. It's paying their energy bills. It's getting food on the table. So people's bandwidth to kind of participate is also lessening in this kind of economic crisis that we're in. So it doesn't always feel, it doesn't have that prominence as like to other issues might. And many people are skeptical still that climate action will save them money. Although people are aware that a lot of the solutions do come at a cost up front, but we're not seeing those results or solutions translate into lower bills yet. We're still in that phase where we're trying to adopt it at scale. So, but a positive spin on this is that in spite of all this, when we speak to people, a lot of people are doing things and showing up for our planet across the country, whether it's maintaining our green space, whether it's taking more sustainable transport, choosing to walk or cycle, reducing waste. So yeah, things are happening, and it's our job to kind of help shine a light on that, but also not to underestimate the fact that people are, feeling maxed out. So it's a delicate balance, really. You don't want to come at it with kind of like, oh, here are the solutions. Why aren't we acting on them? Because it's just not that easy,
Mm-hmm. That's great. And when we do research, we've done some research earlier this year on this. It's that sense of busyness that people have. People have full lives that they're worried about those things which you mentioned, and their capacity to engage with some of the topics and some of these behaviours which we're looking to influence are limited. And it's about cutting through, making it seem to the individual that this is important. This is something that is worthy of taking time and engaging around. I think the financial argument that if you do this, it will also save you money is a fantastic hook and a fantastic way of cutting through that busyness sometimes.
Yes, definitely. Yeah, really interesting to hear that your research also kind of backs that up.
Yeah. I'm thinking about that a bit more. Are there messages or narratives which you in Climate Outreach are finding are resonating with people?
Yeah, definitely. So worth saying that the Britain Talks Climate and Nature research that we do, because there are definitely messages that cut through across all different audiences, but just worth saying that a lot of our work is based on the segmentation. So the segments that we use they're the 7 British segments, which are produced by More in Common, a fantastic organisation, and everyone from like the progressive activists to your rooted patriots. We organise people based on their worldviews, their perceptions. So it gets a bit deeper than those typical kind of demographics, age, place, more surface level. And I think it can tell you more about people. And the reason they're called More in Common is that it tries to draw out commonalities across audiences. When we are experiencing quite a lot of division, especially at the moment, it's really worth using those messages that do bring people together. So your question on which areas do, a real headline from our research was that nature is like an incredible unifier, and quite an astounding one. So 3 in every 4 of us say being in nature makes us very happy, not just happy, like really, really happy and thrilled and and connected. And I think often people forget that nature and climate is synonymous. So, you know, not forgetting to make that connection where you can, if you're talking about preserving and maintaining nature, is awesome. Health and well-being is also a big one, you know. So if we're talking about lower traffic neighborhoods, say, if that means cleaner air, if it means safer streets, if green spaces give us more peace of mind, then that's just really powerful as well. Like putting people, you know, at the center and those health benefits is awesome. Also, talking about the progress that we've made really gives people a sense of pride, which is really interesting. And people are often really surprised to hear the progress that we're making. So to give you an example, we shared the amount of renewables that produce our electricity. And people actually don't know that there's quite, now we're actually over the 50% mark. I think last year's stats showed that. But at the time we said it was around 40%, and people were still extremely happy and surprised. You know, people don't hear that kind of news enough. So any kind of progress, although, you know, if we're in the sphere, we might forget that it's new, you know, reminding people of that really goes a long way. Other topics, young people, you know, investing in our kind of future generations is huge. And also investing in kind of a secure future is quite a strong message. So in the context of the war in Iran, you know, our energy security is quite volatile. So we did some testing around, you know, do you think that we need to ensure kind of that energy security and you know, move away from this kind of unstable fossil fuel industry, basically? And people are in agreement with that. They recognize that. So, but yeah, so investing in that kind of happier, healthier future also goes a long way. And, you know, if you can touch on all of the above, amazing. Depending on, you know, every organization and person will have their different agenda. I used to work at Trees for Cities, actually. I know you had Esme on recently, and obviously trees, they speak to so many things, you know, health and well-being, hope, planting for the future. But that's just one example of something where you can really touch on those different.
Yeah, I think that's really great. I think there's some really powerful motivators there, right? You're trying to influence people, and I think we can all recognize that is all those things are great, and those are the things we could and should be leading with. And I think if you think about, you know, just the dust is settling from the local elections and people are voting different parties, and you look at manifestos and you think about nature and the environment, you know, we don't have any parties who are campaigning and saying, oh, we don't want to do more about nature and the environment, whereas net zero gets a bit of a bit of a political football and gets a much rougher ride.
Absolutely. And we see that actually. So we've got actually a whole bunch of, we also did some message testing on net zero, and actually a lot of people, I think it's like a third of people a third of people know what net zero means. A lot of people simply can't struggle to explain it in simple terms, but when it's getting weaponized, you know, as it is, it's not always the best strategy to talk about. Actually, you know, you can translate net zero into tangible outcomes and benefits, which I think is really helpful.
100%. So if you've got I don't know, a member, user, resident, somebody who's concerned about these sort of things, you know, you might have given them a message around you know, progress being inspirational, or clean air in their community being of interest to them, and they're engaged about that topic. How do you, in your opinion, how do you turn that kind of concern into actual tangible behavior change?
Definitely. And to touch on the concern, so when we did the Britain Talks Climate and Nature research, we found that like 65% of people are really concerned about climate change across the UK. So the concern is there. And the big question, you know, how do you turn that into action? And there's a kind of wider body of, a lot of research has gone into this. So I really recommend the work of Kristen Mayer. He's the director of the climate change unit at UCL. You might be aware of him. And his research shows that when you evoke an emotional response in people, that actually isn't an indicator of action, that people are going to then, you know, enact to kind of help change.
Do something.
To do something. Unfortunately, but where you do start to see people then act is simply that through seeing others act. So, we are social animals. We're sheep really at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And ultimately action does inspire action. So if people are seeing that others are doing things as part of our society's, fight against climate change, like tackling that together, then that really serves as a recipe for action. And it also signals the scale of the problem, right? If you're seeing groups of people act. But it's difficult because I think climate change it's viewed often at like an individual level or a systemic level. So it's like we need to stop filling that gap a bit more with stories of like change at a community level, at a local level. That can really go a long way.
Yeah. So do you feel it's about putting small actionable steps to individuals to start off on that journey to then build that social proof element?
Yeah. That and also just really showing examples of where that's being done. I think that's really powerful. Not easy, but if you're an organization that you have that avenue and the ability to share those positive stories of action, then that's great. It's great to see. We'll put out like a social post, or it might get a lot of likes, but we just don't see that transpires into action. It's also not the easiest thing to measure, right? Like research that we do, is that inspiring change? But we see you see evidence of it everywhere. The government are they're putting out really good plans, like their warm homes plan, looking at ways for people to adopt heat pumps, things like that, and actually starting to explain what that will mean, like lower bills and things like that. But it's when more people start to adopt heat pumps, and if we can help visualize that. So one of our photographers was out taking photos of heat pumps, just kind of in real life, kids running around their gardens and the heat pump's just there. It's like normalizing it a bit more as well. People have the heat pumps, or there's a solar panel on someone's roof and it's really cutting down their bills, and that's becoming more the norm. And you're seeing more and more of those things, which is great. But it's trying, capturing those moments and kind of shouting it to the rooftops, really, that this adoption's happening, this kind of solar revolution, we're calling it as well, so there is examples everywhere that we can kind of shout about.
Oh, that's great. That's really good. And then we touched on earlier about this kind of climate anxiety around people feeling overwhelmed, and that is a bit like an ostrich burying their head in the sand. It can lead to decision paralysis, and it can lead to people not really wanting to engage with it because it's quite scary and quite big and overwhelming. Any tips or advice about how to turn that into something positive and actionable?
Yes. So firstly, just to acknowledge that it really is an overwhelming thing. There's this philosopher called Timothy Merton. He has this this descriptor for it. He calls it a hyper object, which is this sense of overwhelm. Climate change is complex in its meaning and also in its impacts, and there's just so many factors which are at play. That it understandably causes people to think, well, how can I help kind of mitigate that? So one thing that's really good to know is that, like, on a systemic level, people do want the government to do more. Most of us want to see the government to do more. I think it's reminding people that is the case. That people do want to see that change at a policy at a wider level. People also want to see strong leadership. If people have committed to a climate policy, even in the face of a challenge, people see that as a sign of a strong leader if people then go commit to making that happen. So we encourage businesses and leaders to just be quite confident that enforcing that change is that people want to see that. We're an organization that, as I said before, we listen to people, and we want to remind people that they have the wider population's backing. So I think that goes a long way, because a lot of climate change action does rely on that wider systemic change.
Yes.
And then, like, on an individual level, we know that people don't like to feel like the onus is on them as like an individual. So talking about that climate action on like what's happening in someone's area locally. We looked at like a recycling campaign, actually. You'll see it in different areas, but messaging around recycling, where it's like, everyone else is doing it. Making those things easy for people also goes a long way. There's some really good organizations who like shining a light on local action. So Local Storytelling Exchange are a great organization, a team of journalists up and down the country who are looking for these kind of stories. So I recommend checking those out. On Friday, actually, I'm going to see a bike bus. You know, this concept of people cycling on their commute. So I'm going to go visit a bike bus in Lewisham on Friday.
Love it.
Talk to them there, and show the benefits of more of a fun commute, really. That's safer for the kids. Any opportunity you can to kind of show this group action and it's positive. People like to see that. It's feel good news. It's and it just gives people
doom and gloom, isn't it?
Yeah. People really like to see that those stories of progress. And we also shone a bit of a light on that during the last COP as well. Obviously, COP is more about that kind of wider global policy, but we tried to remind people that look, there is change already happening at home. And multilateralism, it works to a point, but we do still need that to show that change is happening already at kind of a national level. So.
Yeah, demonstrating that progress. That's great.
Yeah.
And then for an organizational level, as I say, some people might be watching this who are sustainability managers who who tackled these issues. Are there any tips, or any mistakes that you often see organizations make when talking around sustainability and climate? We've spoken just now about you talk about the Britain Talks Climate, about the segmentation, the different groups within that.
Yes.
About keeping it local. I wonder if that's making content specific for different groups. Maybe that's an example.
Yeah, definitely. And something that also cuts through. So I'd say top three biggest mistakes we see. One is giving air to climate denialism, because only 4% of people don't think climate change is real, which is a small minority. But you watch the news, you see that as we said earlier, net zero is weaponized. You can forget that actually the population, the wider population are worried about climate change. So kind of fanning the flames or giving air to those negative stories about climate change doesn't work. Or we shouldn't. We've moved past that now. That's one thing. Also, to use the term net zero with quite a lot of care. As I said earlier, a lot of people don't actually know what it means. But the good news is if you can kind of qualify it and talk about, its benefits, then that actually does really work. So if you're wedded to the term net zero, I understand that a lot of targets are set around it, very admirable ones. So it's not to dismiss it all. It's just talking about if you use it as a term, handle that with care. So if you do use it, qualify it. And number three, which always kind of fascinates me, is the idea about trash talking the fossil fuel industry. And we advise people not to do that, because although a lot of us, we're well aware that moving away from fossil fuels is a really important step. Those industries, a lot of people's lives have been built on them. So a lot of people will not be receptive to kind of a cartoon baddie of Shell, or do you know what I mean? It's not necessarily the best angle if you're trying to mobilize a whole community in the clean energy transition.
I always feel on that one that people would also. It's easy to counter that by talking about our dependence on different types of plastics, or it's not just fuel that goes into the cars. It's kind of we have a whole society which unfortunately is built on polycarbonates and plastic use, and that means that as soon as you start doing that sort of thing, it's easier for people to go, well, you've got, I don't know, plastic soled shoes, you can't talk about, you can't comment on this, or you've got how did you get to the office today? It's easy for people to kind of and it's not necessarily that it's a great argument to make as we wean ourselves off those sort of hydrocarbon production chains, but people do recognize that it's quite a big part of our our society and our economies.
Yeah, definitely. It's like talking about it like you're holier than thou is not.
Yeah,
It's alienating, isn't it?
yeah, very much,
It's
and can be
like,
very cringe at times, can't it?
yeah,
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 and we're not all perfect, and
yeah,
I think being honest about that and in our approach, yeah, is effective, and kind of vulnerable in your comms, and that also goes a long way, I think.
yeah. I think that also then speaks to a point in Britain Talks Climate about trust and
Yes, yeah.
relatability and reliability, and we've seen this stat used before around people are more, 3 times as more likely to trust a colleague than they are to trust their CEO. How important do you think trust and relatability and reliability are within an organization when talking around climate?
Yeah, massively important. Definitely, I'd say the messenger is maybe sometimes more important than the message itself, or definitely
Yeah,
as important. And across like our focus groups, we tried to kind of get a short list really of the qualities that someone would need to kind of garner trust. And the good news is that you can earn it. You don't innately have these qualities, but trust can be earned and it can be lost. But if you are empathetic, credible, and show passion in what you're talking about, then that works. And if you can do all three of those, great. But we're not all David Attenborough, and he's routinely, not surprisingly, listed as one of our top kind of trusted climate messages, understandably. But if you look, within your organization, I think passion is just huge, and also I think the point that credibility, you don't have to have a master's in climate change to be able to talk on this issue, and I think being aware almost about what you don't know, and being clear on what you do is important, because if we're going to move at the rate we need to, then we need to kind of bring more people into the climate change sector. Then if you can kind of showcase any one of those qualities, all three incredible, then it works.
that's great. That's yeah. But yeah, on the flip side, isn't it? It also can erode very quickly if you can erode if you're not being authentic to those things.
Yeah, and we say trust is like kind of a sliding scale as well. There's some things which it could be an off switch where people say, no, sorry, I'm out. But it is, because you can kind of build it, lose it, build it back again. It's also about, if maybe you put something out that's received less well, it's not too late to kind of make amends and, prove your worth as a climate messenger. And, just trying things out as well with different people and formats is something that's worthwhile.
I love that. Yeah. And then when you people are being that climate messenger and talking about what people should be doing or the strategy within their organization, is it storytelling or is it facts, do you think, which actually work, which shines through the most?
Yeah, so really good question. I would definitely go towards storytelling. It has a huge role to play, annoyingly for us, because we do a lot of research that facts don't work. So an example of this, when we tested the term net zero, like we said, like hypothetically, if your local council is aiming towards net zero, it gets about half support. If you then talk about its benefits, then the support increases by another 10%. And if you just talk about like a vision of better, tell a story of happier, healthier future, more secure for your kids, then actually support goes up again. So it's building that powerful narrative, and there's so many spaces you can do that as well within like culture. We did some research on that, which showed that we're a nation we watch TV, most of us, every day. There's such a gap that could be filled with like really good climate change content and stories that inspire that change, and you do see more and more of it actually. Sometimes I notice like a wind farm, a scene of a wind farm in a drama or something, which is good to see. But more and more of those, so like stories don't have to be a beginning and an end about climate change. You can kind of drop solutions in there in kind of a more of a subtle way as well.
Brilliant. Great. Okay. Final question. Time's short. Final question, I think, for me is just if someone watching this wanted to be a better climate communicator, what are the top things they should start doing differently?
Yeah, really good question. So yeah, I'd bring it back to what I said at the start, which is telling a story of people, putting people right at the center, um, of progress, the progress that we've achieved, the progress that we're aiming for, and the potential as well that we have, to do more. And reframing this as a story of kind of giving people a sense of agency, as well, and enactors of change really just go a long way. And the more we can do that, the better. And do check out our research as well, Britain Talks Climate and Nature. We've got a whole toolkit on there as well of do's and don'ts when you're approaching comms. We run workshops as well for organizations and individuals, to kind of get on board, because we realize that every organization has kind of their own audience. So we kind of do a lot of work to help tailor that research to your audience. And yeah, there's always a really good experience that speaking to different people, because there's a lot of passionate people out there who want to do good. And yeah, it's very it's a really uplifting thing to do. So yeah, we're available for kind of any chats you want to have. And yeah, we're all in this together. I want to work with you.
Amazing. That's great. That's so good. Thanks so much, Emma. And I think we could probably talk for hours on all of these subjects and really get stuck into the nitty gritty. But hopefully, if you've joined us today, then that's giving you at least a little starter for 10 over some great tips and some great insights. And yeah, just to echo Emma's comments about that Britain Talks Climate research being, a really powerful, really well thought out, really well researched bit of work, which is certainly really useful for anyone entering this space or trying to get ahead in this space. Emma, thanks again for your time. Really appreciate it, and look forward to catching up soon. Thanks everyone.